We are now looking at the filter functions in LoliTrack 5. The Filter tab is where you threshold images to find the objects you want to track. And to do that, we can use the filter tools over here. The first tool allows us to select or threshold the color and contrast of the pixels we consider our object. In other words, we select the tool and click on our object. The yellow pixels that appear on our object is now what LoliTrack defines as the object. But the yellow pixels do not quite represent the actual object, and this is where the filter adjustment tools come in handy. Typically, you start by increasing the filter strength. This tells LoliTrack that we would like to include more pixels that have similar color and contrasts as the ones we initially selected. And as we increase the filter strength, more and more pixels get thresholded, but at some point we start to see pixels from the background being selected. So we have reached the limit to what the filter strength adjustment tool can give us. Let's dial it back a bit. Currently, LoliTrack finds an object here, our fish, but even these few pixels over here will be objects too, and we don't want that. This is where the minimum and maximum object size tool can help us. Increasing the minimum object size will get rid of this pixel noise, so it's always good to increase this value a bit to avoid that even individual pixels are considered as objects. Same goes for the maximum object size, and as a rule of thumb, you should lower the maximum object size until you see your main object disappear, and then increase it up until halfway between that point and the maximum value. This way, you avoid thresholding larger objects that could appear throughout the video. It's also highly recommended that you now use the timeline cursor to quickly check how the filter settings behave throughout the video, and then change it if needed. The last tool to mention here is that you can indicate the color and contrast of the background. Left-clicking on pixels will indicate that these are object pixels. But if you hold Shift and left-click, you now tell LoliTrack that the pixel values should instead be considered as the background. Note that it can take a few clicks to get a good balance between what's considered object pixels and background pixels. If you find that the color and contrast tools just cannot provide you with a good object filter, we have the option to use a background subtraction tool instead. The background subtraction tool is helpful if our object is moving continuously throughout the video and the background stays immobile. So, note that this tool does not work if the camera or arena is moving at all. The background subtraction tool looks at a certain number of frames throughout the video and defines pixels that maintain the same color and contrast values as background pixels, since nothing is moving there in the video. Pixels that are changing in value because an object is passing by are considered object pixels. In our case, the fish is swimming constantly, so even with the default settings, LoliTrack has already applied a filter to it. Now use the same tools over here to fine-tune the filter. Below the filter tools, there is a background brightness slider. This slider influences the brightness value that's considered background pixels, and as a rule of thumb, if the object is darker than the background, move the slider towards bright to select the brighter pixels as the background. And if the object is brighter than the background, move the slider towards dark. Use the filter strength tool again to include more object pixels if needed. Bear in mind that if the object rests for a while throughout the video, the background subtraction method may fail, and consider this object as part of the background. So again, scrub through the video to check the filter. A point worth mentioning is that the tracking tools in LoliTrack 5 are not always working, as image quality, object contrast, and so forth may be insufficient for reliable tracking. You may run into cases where neither the contrast nor background subtraction tools give you a useful filter. This is where you must reconsider your physical setup in your video. Generally, you want to have an adequate image resolution and a strong contrast between the object and the background. For aquatic animals in particular, we recommend using back illumination with an infrared light source to avoid light reflections on the water surface and to avoid casting animal shadows onto the arena. Also, avoid having strong visible lights which could disturb the behavior of the animals. Another factor to consider is the uniformity of the background. An evenly colored background is much preferred over one with varying color and contrast. Finally, you should avoid having areas where the objects can hide from the camera. If the camera cannot see the objects, LoliTrack will not be able to track them. So, avoid having physical obstacles in the arena where the animals can hide behind. If filming in water, again, consider that many occlusion events resulting from animals moving under or over each other can make individual object tracking impossible. The camera's field of view should cover the entire arena where the objects can move around in, since if they leave the field of view, LoliTrack also cannot track them. And that's it on how to filter objects in LoliTrack 5. Hit OK to save the filter, and then continue to the Tracking tab. If you have any questions about filtering objects in LoliTrack 5 or about other aspects of the software, you're welcome to contact us on our website.